now I'm just looking for, here she is, Mael. And I'm going to put the spotlight on you, Mael. Hello. And Mael, before we get started, I have only read your name. I haven't spoken it aloud, so I want to make sure I pronounce it right. Are you Mael Brigde?
I say Brigde.
Brigde. Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Well, let me introduce our next speaker. Mael Brigde is a devotee of our temple's beloved Irish goddess and saint, Brigid, and founder of the Daughters of the Flame, which has tended a Brigid's Flame since Imbolc 1993. And you'll be excited to hear, Mael, that our temple started our flame tending this year. So we're brand new to it, but it's so great to have you here, someone who's been tending a flame since 1993. She publishes a general interest Brigid blog called Brigid's Sparkling Flame and a Brigid poetry blog called Stone on the Belly. Mael Brigde teaches courses and webinars on Brigid, including her journey with Brigid, Goddess of Poetry, an intensive class that explores reading and writing poetry as a sacred act. She is the author of a Brigid of Ireland Devotional called Sun Among Stars. And today she's going to be reading aloud from Sun Among Stars and sharing her love of Brigid with us. Welcome, Mael.
Thank you. And I'm going to stand up, so I have to experiment. If I stand here, how well can you hear me?
Fine, you're fantastic, really nicely clear.
Great. All right, now I can see you. So hello and thank you. I was really surprised and happy to be invited to this. I'm really enjoying it. Oh, and you can see all my all my masks over there. It's like having a bra hanging out, but anyway. Yeah, so you said everything I might have said in introduction, except maybe that the purpose of this book, here she is. The reason I wrote it was because I was writing hundreds of poems to and prayers to Brigid, both as goddess and saint, mushed together, partly because they were just pouring out of me, but also I would have liked to have beside my altar a book that I could pick up to help me get to that contemplative place with Brigid, and I didn't have anything. I had a few old Christian poems or prayers that were lovely, but not exactly where I was. So that's what I have now, and I keep it on my altar so that I can read and get to that place very quickly, because for me it's hard to move in there. But then I also wrote a bunch of essays. About a third of the book, I suppose, is essays and resources and things like that, because I wanted it to be useful to people who were either devotees of Brigid or I'm talking to your pictures, but I should actually be talking to the camera. So to people who are interested in Brigid. So that's what we have. And we'll see how we go with all these little tabs. How am I doing for time? I'm not sure. I don't have a timepiece in front of me.
You're great. And I will let you know when there's about 5 minutes, okay?
Okay. So I'm going to just leap into this, and I've tried to develop some sort of an arc. So some of the poems are to the saint or about the saint, some the goddess, and some mixed together. So, and I'm not going to tell you which. You can just let yourself go. Shadow harvest. Who will tell the story of the sisters Brigid? There is no harvest of tales gathered for them as for their saintly air. But shadows move in the reeds and rushes, in the ashes and in the springs. Their deep voice wakens the wild corners of the land, in herb and bird and beast, in the fading rhythms of the folk. Who will gather these shadows, weave for the triple goddess, the ancient three-armed cross? crossing divides. In your world, before gods were hidden, race pitted against race, slaves were taken. A man might hit his wife. Feuds were legal means to make amends. Yet too, house fostered child of distant house. Child grew, knowing stranger clans as kin. Woman might leave a man, take her goods if he left a mark. Marriage crossed the race divide. Gods and non-gods laid together, all lines blurred. You, Brigit, know well of this. Saint, daughter of nobleman Duffic, daughter of Bruchuk, slave. Goddess, proud woman of the Tua de Dannen, wed to Bresh, half Fomorian. Let us build on your foundations, build high this ark of possibility. A loaf of bread, a jug of ale, a home to tend for all. Dear mother of just peace. Well offering. Deep, deep and black the shaft of your great well, sinks through yielding earth to touch the she. Bronze, bronze and fine the offerings to Goddess Brig, forged and split and given to your world. Below, below the shifting winds and rain-wet fog, below the bawling calf and peeling ewe, far below, a goddess hears and listens. We cast our bounty deep into your well. At battle's pause, the army turned for camp, trudged beneath weight of bronze-bossed shields, long and broad enough for a man to crouch behind, trudged beneath weight of spear and sword, of thick-shafted javelin, beneath weight of bloody clothing, sagging bitter wound, war-worn limbs, weight of handsome, gold-locked champion, once fierce, a whirl in cutting, churning throngs, now still and borne aloft. At your well, Brigit, they met their king, piled before him each a stone, and each a head, made of them a great cairn upon the hero's form. Healers gathered, brought their physic herbs, crushed and scattered them till the water's anguished face, your precious healing pool, lay thick and green. In they dipped the injured, out soldiers sprang, renewed and hale. But even goddesses must say farewell to mighty dead. It looks like all of my, no, shoot, some of them are still here, good. Sorry about that. Brigit meets the king. Duffic left his daughter in the chariot with his sword. Already we guess how this story has to go. Rose to enter the house of Leinster's king. Not grand his dwelling, like any other man's, a little large perhaps, roofed and sheltered, shining, well kept, free of hounds and beasts, wherein was honor and welcome offered in honeyed words. Duffic at his reception told his tale, then went to fetch the maid. She spied the king poised on his high seat, and wooden couches, not straw, on which his guests might rest. He smiled. Your father tells me it is time for him to sell you, for you make him a pauper when you give his wealth away. Not his, but God's, she rejoined him. Noble Duffic grimaced at her words. The good king listened, weighed their case, said, I fear she would make me too dear to her God, and I would have to sell my back to live. Let her free, friend Duffic. Let her have her God. Let us see what she will do with him in time. Resigned, her father walked to his chariot, the daughter and the king at his side. Where is my jeweled sword? He cried. Brigit's glance reveals on the hillside, retreating round a bend, a man in tatters bears a burden in one arm. Laughs Leinster. Here, my friend, I give you mine. Long she served her God in Ireland, many times by her king. By her, the king was bargained flat. But though he never bowed inside her chapel, he bade his druid chant protection on her name. Brigit and the Madman. The madman came, bearded and wild, toenails curved inward, hair tangled with feathers. Birds dug dark beetles from his skin. 7 years he'd wandered, eyes bloodied with grief for slaughter. Black pinioned spirits of battle hung above clash and clamor, dizzied the warring chieftain, urged him to flee to woods and plain, live on cresses, take counsel from the birds. Brigit heard his gibbering, went to him with ale and butter, begged to hear the wisdom of his unsettled mind. What did he see in her of cress or woodcock or fawn that permitted him to stop a while and preach his anguished truth? Brigit wakens. Frost clutches the thorn, wrens huddle, feathers puffed, deer stiff with cold, nip tips of willow twigs. Brigit wakens, kicks her feathered blanket from her legs, descends from her bed to the frozen lake. A touch of her palm tames the water's tension. Fingers melt its rigid plane. Stir the cold broth mildly, back and forth. Sleepy trout rise stipple-sided from the muddy bed in sloth. Spring smooths winter's transfixed edges, urges green and busy life upon the land. Well, 8 has disappeared. So we'll just go with 9. Wait. 8. Brigit's garden, sweetest grass, greenest pasture, counterpart of heaven. Your red-eared cattle graze, shrug off the biting fly. Your wren stalks, tail alert among the rush's shanks, and swan's breast silent on slivers of white pond. This is your garden, Brigit, where sure-footed horses kick out chunks of earth in delight. Numinous land. Beneath the sun, golden wine-filled cup, giver of life, comfort to the dead, you dwell. Every oak and thistle, every bog and stream possessed of deities, you among them, seeping out through cress and liverwort, stalking out on hoof and toe. Standing here, I am drenched in divinity. This mist-soaked land, these blue-backed waves, this storm-shocked, sun-shattered sky. Ancestral dream. I lie beneath the sprawling halo of the oak, its roots far sunk in the other world, my eyes veiled and quiet, the tang of poetry light upon my lips, and dream of you, Brigit. This dream, youngest daughter of 1,000 older dreams, your face transforms in the changing light, voice to voice, silence to silence, so much forgotten, so much drawn anew. My ancestors lay beneath the oak, the roof pole, set out on journeys of the soul, their course, their vision so different from my own. A goldfinch flutters in your outspread arms above me. A gold-torqued swan crests the offering pool. The sun-gold shimmer of your face bends toward me, Brigid. Golden scent of your amber honey. I breathe you in. With this dream of you, I link hands with those who came before me. Where we would argue, where our hearts would meet, I cannot tell. But the warmth of Imbash enters me, goddess of my kin, saint of my elder church. And through this dream of you, I rest with them. The blessing I ask. We've come to you for every kind of blessing, on house, on love, on health. All your people have drawn to your golden radiant flame, from dangers winged and clawed, from mysteries dumb. I don't fear the eagle and fox, the restless great-hipped bear. My water is clean, my cupboard middling full. But blades churn, I am harrowed. If the grave was close around me, I couldn't be more bound. This ancient shadow steals my breath. This fire leaps and jerks. This hammer madly clamors at my chest. Here is the blessing I ask, Brigid. Forget I asked the rest. Ease the breath that feeds me. Bless and ease my fear. Ease and bless the rage that scalds and scrapes. Call me in your chariot. Keep me a time with you. Help me tame this striving, saddened beast. Remind me of the marigold, chin turned to perfect sun, the pure birch standing, flakes of gold on slender bone in that sun's light. Show me the bending hill, your strong raised knee, the scented pool cradled in your palm. And I will remember, I will again remember, joy hidden just beneath my fear. And the last one, visitor at the door. I tremble as paper, stirred by a gentle draft. The door of my hut is open before you. No cloak hangs over it to muffle the force of entry, obscure the intensity of your light. My chair is rolling away.
Oh, brava. Absolutely amazing, beautiful offerings. I'm going like right now and buying your book online.
Thank you.
Are you open to some questions?
Mm-hmm. I tried to leave time for that.
I'm so glad you did. When in one of your pieces, it was one of the latter ones, you said a word, imbolc. Is that IMBOLC? Is
No,
that no?
That's Imbolc. That's
That is
festival. Imbolc is the ancient poets. One of their endeavors was to reach a state where Imbolc would enter them, which is, it's really hard to translate, not for me, because I couldn't possibly, but for the people who actually know Old Irish. But it sort of is enlightened poetry, like ecstatic perception. Yeah.
sort of like being possessed by that, in that bardic spirit, that enlightened spirit that inspires you to open up your words and let them fly.
Mm-hmm. And wisdom. I mean, it's a kind of wisdom, so that it's not necessarily your own wisdom, but you're embodying that supernatural wisdom. It's similar to what in Welsh they call Awen.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Oh, yes, I've heard that. That word is one I'm more familiar with. Thank you. Okay, that helps me kind of map the term, because I thought all of a sudden, what if I've been pronouncing that word the wrong way this whole time? But thank you. Thank you for unpacking that. And I had one other question that maybe you could take a little further. One of your earlier pieces that you shared today was about basically that there were prohibitions from interracial marriage, and that in some cases, and that in under Brigid's mantle, that wasn't the case, and that people could come together even if they were from different cultures or different groups. Is that something, I don't know much of Irish history. Can you tell us a little bit about the inspiration for that piece and what you're conveying there?
Yeah, that's not exactly what I was hoping to say. What I was trying to set out in the first stanza is some of the really rotten laws that they had in those days. And then in the next, some of the really great things that were legal or embraced, So actually the gods and non-gods, the marrying between was accepted. And a person could change their status. I didn't mention that in that, but although you might be born into a certain status, you could lose your status or gain status based on what you did in life. So
there was kind of a greater fluidity and flexibility there than in some more stratified cultures where people weren't allowed to intermarry, or where no matter what you did, if you were born in a certain class or state of being, you were stuck there.
Yeah, it was very stratified, and it wasn't easy to shift, but it was possible. I just thought of just like the States today, they talk about, anybody can do it. Well, that's not true. Most
Right.
people can't do it, but some people can. Yeah, so it may kind of be a parallel to that. But then in the following stanza, I'm talking about how she herself, she's a liminal being in so many ways. We know her as a goddess, we know her as a saint. As a saint, she was born on the threshold of she was in the possession of a druid at that time. Her father had sold her as a young, like before she was born, he sold her mother. And so when her mother gave birth, she gave birth with one foot outside and one foot inside, which is very liminal, so there's a lot of that. She's spring comes from her, or she brings the spring. So that's, she's on the threshold of winter and summer, and so many different ways she is. And so that's what I'm trying to say. Can we embrace that threshold energy and just be more just?
Oh, I loved that. This was just marvelous. And I don't know if anyone else has any questions, but if you do, feel free to ask Mael in the comments. And Mael, you've got quite a few compliments down there waiting for you when you're ready to read them. And I've already clicked buy on your book, and I hope everyone else will too. It's called a Brigid of Ireland Devotional, Sun Among Stars. And it is absolutely wonderful. And I'm going to put that book on my altar and add it to my monthly flame tending practice. So thank you so much, Mael. And I'm going